Welcome to The Hidden Load, the podcast where we uncover the unseen weight carried by the educators and leaders in medicine and explore how to lighten it. I am Dr. Santina or Tina Wheat. I am a family physician, an educator, a leader, and a coach. Each week, we will dig into the challenges that often go unspoken, from burnout and boundaries to purpose and identity to figuring out sustainability, and share practical tools to help you move from chaos to calm and from burnout to balance. Because the hidden load does not have to be yours to carry alone, and in fact, shouldn't be. Let's get started.
Welcome to this bonus episode, Quitting Day and Getting Back on Track in Leadership. I am your host, Dr. Santina or Tina Wheat. I'm a family physician, an educator, and a career and life coach who is helping healthcare professionals and leaders move from burnout to balance and lead in a way that actually aligns with their values. And today, we are talking about Quitting Day. Quitting Day is that moment in early January when the resolutions we hoped would transform our year quietly but surely disappear. Today, I want to reframe something for you. Quitting Day is not proof that you can't change. Quitting Day really is a checkpoint. It's a moment to reflect, a moment to reset, and a moment to realign. And for those of us who are leaders and educators in healthcare, this conversation really matters because the way that you handle goals, the way that you handle setbacks, and the way that you handle growth, well, it directly impacts the people that you teach, the people that you lead, and the cultures that you are shaping. So let's talk about what Quitting Day really is, why it hits healthcare professionals harder, and how you can get back on track, especially without shame, burnout, or another layer of pressure. Okay, let's start with what Quitting Day actually is. So Quitting Day is that moment, technically the second Friday of the year, which this year happens to be January 9th, when most people abandon their New Year's resolutions. Not just those of us in medicine, but everyone. But here is what I want you to hear. It's not because most people don't care, and it's not because most people don't think that their resolutions are important. It's really because the goals that we set weren't designed for real life. They weren't designed for us to be successful. And in healthcare, well, real life is already a lot. We start the year already tired, especially after we have worked through the holidays, carried the emotional load of our patients and our learners as they struggle through the holidays. And then we hit January, often with no recovery time at all. But somehow we show up with more responsibilities and we're asking ourselves to do more. So when we quit, when that streak of going to the gym stops, or the journaling that we promise to do every day ends, or that new leadership practice falls apart, well, it's not actually a failure of discipline, because those of us in medicine, we know discipline. So I want to share one of my quitting day stories. One year, I set a goal to have protected reflection time every morning. Everyone said that this was the right thing to do. So, in honesty, it lasted less than a week before call responsibilities, managing my family, and just regular patient care crushed the plan. Not because I didn't care or think that it was a good idea, but because January had already taken every ounce of energy that I had. Now, it wasn't that I was weak. It was that I had so much already going on. And that's important. Quitting Day isn't about weakness. It is about bandwidth, and it's about context, and most importantly, it's about capacity. And none of that makes you a bad leader or educator or friend or parent. It makes you human. So I'm going to share 4 main reasons why resolutions fall apart, specifically for those of us who are healthcare educators and leaders. The first reason is that often when we're setting these goals, we're setting them from a place of exhaustion. You were already drained. You're trying to get out of that. But it's extremely hard to build sustainable habits from survival mode. A depleted brain, well, it just can't design long-term change. It is focused on just getting through that next task, that next clinical day, that next learner crisis. So the plans that we make are just unreasonable. The second reason is that we are setting goals based on a past version of ourselves. So maybe as you're thinking of your goals, you're thinking of yourself before you became that program director, or before you became a parent, or before you took on that new leadership responsibility, or before you changed clinics or were promoted, or when the system hadn't shifted beneath your feet yet. You are not the same you that you were 2 years ago. And that's a good thing. And so we have to remember that our goals shouldn't depend on that person from 2 years ago either. So often as I have moved up or been promoted or taken on more responsibilities, I had this idea that I could do everything exactly the same. Thinking like weekly protected exercise, working out at an hour a day. That wasn't necessarily sustainable. So as I changed, I had to shift my goals to something that was more manageable within my personal context and capacity. Okay, reason number 3, healthcare culture encourages fix everything at once type thinking. Be excellent and never show weakness. Improve constantly. And how could we forget? Do more with less. Other leaders are doing this. Why aren't you? And so with all of that in mind, we create resolution packages, not goals. And then we get defeated when we can't achieve that entire thing. We feel defeated when they collapse. Okay. And then number 4 is because your goals were based on expectations, not on values. Our goals rooted in pressure will evaporate the second life gets busy. Goals rooted in values can bend, they can adapt, and they can still move forward, even when there's bumps in the road. This is especially important for leaders. When you set goals from expectations, then you're modeling perfectionism. And we know that that's a recipe for failure. So when you set goals from values, then you are able to model alignment. And not only are you more likely to succeed, you're more likely to do so in a way where you feel fulfilled. So if you've been caught up by quitting day, or are feeling like the goals that you already set aren't making sense anymore, you don't need a new year to start again. You just need a new moment. We know that healthcare runs on irregular schedules, and so your fresh start can use any of those moments. It might be the first day after a call block, or it might be the day that you hand off a leadership project, or it might be the day that you get your energy back, or it might be a Thursday afternoon in February. Whatever it is, it's okay as long as it's the moment for you. Your growth timeline does not need to match anyone else's. It just needs to be honest. The thing that I have stuck with the most was my exercise practice. And I didn't start it as part of a January 1st resolution exercise. I started it as okay, today's the day I'm going to take me back. It didn't matter that it was a random Thursday. It wasn't the beginning of the week or a specific holiday or the beginning of a month or the beginning of a year. It was just the day that I was ready. It worked better than any specific resolution practice because I had the context, the energy, and the focus that aligned with me that day. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to share with you a 5-step reset plan. And I want you to think of this as a reset roadmap. Let's start with step number 1. Reflect without judgment. Reflection isn't self-criticism, though it often can feel that way. Instead, reflection is data. I want you to stop and ask yourself, what was I trying to do? And what actually happened? What got in the way? Was it systems or schedules or emotions or expectations? What does that tell me about what it is that I actually need? Leaders who reflect out loud are able to teach their teams to do the same without shame. There are times in the year when I get overly busy. Sometimes it's when I have lots of conferences. Sometimes it's when everybody else is on vacation. Sometimes it's just when things are shifting in our home life as my children have more vacation and are around more often. And so whenever one of those times happen, I pause and I reflect and I look at what my barrier is. Most often, it is never the motivation. Most often, it's the workload and the lack of protected time to allow me to think, to work, and to refresh myself. Whenever I do this, that clarity helps me readjust my expectations and think through what can I actually accomplish at that time. Okay, step number 2 is to reconnect to your values. I think this is so important for so many different reasons. And the way that you can do this is to ask yourself, what value is this goal tied to? Why does it matter to me as a leader or as a person? Why do I need to do this goal now? Is it aligned with the season that I'm personally or professionally in? When we have goals that aren't tied to our values, they are never going to survive a busy clinic week. Moving on to step number 3. Choose one aligned thing. Just one. Not 5, not 10, just one. And ask yourself, which one goal would make the biggest difference for me in my well-being, in my leadership, or my teaching, whichever the one that you think you need right then. So, for example, in the past, I have focused on spending protected time to just read things that were enjoyable. And what this did was it shifted my energy. And when I shifted my energy, I was able to find more joy. And I was a more pleasant leader. And then step number 4, make it stupidly simple. And that just sort of sounds silly, but it's really important. You want to make sure that this goal is inevitable. And to do that, it has to be simple. When you make small habits, they bypass resistance. So, for example, maybe it's 5 minutes of reflection, or 10 minutes of movement, or reading one leadership article per week. Or maybe it's 1 hour of protected time weekly for yourself, like I mentioned, to read. Or one boundary per day, or saying one no per week. When you start with something so small, it's actually achievable. And small habits survive healthcare's realities. And then once you have those small habits ingrained, you can add on to them and build and build and build. But before you get there, step number 5 is to build accountability that actually works. Healthcare leaders thrive with their community support, their transparent routines, their clear expectations, and then most importantly, their permission to adapt. You need to have accountability to help you get there. Some of it's going to be internal accountability. Maybe it's the checklist that gives you that little bit of dopamine hit when you check it off. But maybe you need external accountability. That might be coaching, or leadership cohorts, or peer mentorship, or monthly resets that help you make your growth inevitable. One of the biggest things that helped me on my path to incorporating exercise on a very consistent basis was joining an accountability group. That group allowed me to have a plan for what I was going to do every single week. There was a game as part of it, and so I was motivated to help my team stay on top and to not let them down. And that accountability kept me on track even when competing priorities threatened my goals. I'm still in this group 3 years later, always waiting for that next round to start, making sure that I stay on top of things. Without that group, I'm not sure that I would have stayed on track of my fitness routine. And now, without that routine, I feel off. And so it's become a habit. So let's talk about how you talk about this with your team. Now, your culture is shaped by what you normalize. And so it's okay to tell your team, everyone loses momentum. It's totally normal. And also, goals are allowed to evolve. Adaptation is not failure. And when we make small, sustainable steps, they matter so much more than those big January declarations. As an educator, it could be that you allow your resident or your student to reset their goal mid-rotation, allowing them to be more confident and engaged in their work. Or it could be that you stop and say, hey, what's getting in the way of this working? Can I help you shift it so that it makes more sense for you and that it becomes more inevitable? As you do this more and more often, your learners and your teams will learn that this is what they can do to help them reach their own goals. So now, if you are listening today and thinking, I already fell off, I already quit, I'm already behind, I want you to remember this. You are not behind. You're just beginning again. It is just time to think about, how do I reset my goal in such a way that I'm going to make it inevitable? Can I use this roadmap that was just laid out to help me get there? Quitting day is not the end of your goals. Quitting day is the moment that they finally become realistic. And so as you're listening to this, if you realize that maybe you need support in some of these steps, whether it's alignment or boundaries or leadership development or sustainable growth, then I hope you'll check the show notes for my website and check out the different coaching options and workshops that I have and resources that I have to design to help healthcare leaders reset without shame or burnout. And if you're catching this before quitting day, then I actually have a special going on, and that information is in my show notes too. But if you're catching this after quitting day, then still reach out because maybe there's a new special going on and I'm happy to chat. I want to thank you for showing up today. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for your learners, for your teams, and for the patients who benefit from the ways that you lead. Let's make the rest of this year aligned, intentional, and grounded in who you are becoming.
Thanks for joining me on The Hidden Load. Tag me on Instagram at Dr. Tina Wheat or email me at santina@santinawheat.com with your takeaways and ideas. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, let's lighten your hidden load.